Welcome to People Love Process. In this movie, we're going to use both Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator to create a photographic-based collage design. Now, Illustrator will serve as our staging ground to compose our elements and use simple vector methods to colorize and detail our final artwork. This is always a fun style to work in, so let's get started. We're going to start off in Photoshop because the image sources I'm going to show you a variety of ways you can source out images to use in a collage because copyright is involved and you need to be aware of a few things, but there's plenty of great resources. One of them is if you have a Creative Cloud membership, you can get access to Adobe Stock's free images. And this is an Adobe Stock free image. Now, I'm creating a face of sorts for the artwork we're going to create for this design. And I have different elements I'm pulling from different photographs in order to pull it off. And one of the elements is I wanted kind of an eye that was open and kind of shocking. And I thought this guy's eye on this side would work great for that. So this is the stock image I started with. And all I want to do is create the asset, ultimately a black and white grayscale TIFF image that I can use and place into Illustrator. So I just wanted to walk you through. Now, I'm no Photoshop guru. If you want to see true Photoshop mastery on a Gandalf level, then go to my channels category on my People of Process YouTube channel and check out Jesus Ramirez's Photoshop YouTube page. Absolutely brilliant when it comes to Photoshop. When I get stuck because I don't know everything about Photoshop, I usually email him and he helps me out. So the kind of Photoshop I'm going to show you here, anybody can do this if I can do it. So on this, I just need his eye. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and make a selection that I have here just to crop in on just what I need. So we can go to crop because this is all we're going to worry about is just working off of this. So that's all we need is his eye here. Maybe go out just a little. That's good. We're going to use that. So I have the file set up for all the steps I take, so you don't always have to go back to the video and rewatch it. So that's what I do first. You'd want to turn it into a black and white. Now, I usually don't keep everything in a color file, but I'm doing it here because it's a PSD file. You could convert to grayscale at this point, but in this case, we're just going to use a layer effect to get the grayscale, and then we want to blow this out so we have distinct light and darks, but keep some of the mid-range detail, and so that's where levels comes in. So I blow it out. Then on a layer above it, this is where I would just take the black, I would go to the gradient tool. You'd want to select the one that blends from the fill color to 0 alpha here. And you want to do it on a layer above it. So if you don't like it, you can undo it and go back and try it again. But I'm just going to create a shadowed area. And this, once again, this is just going to be dependent on what you're creating, something like that. I might get more of the nose covered, kind of like that. That's all I'm talking about. That's literally the Photoshop work I'm talking about. I would save this out as a grayscale TIFF image, and that's what we're going to place into Illustrator. Now, if I turn on the final result, it's going to be a little different. You can see I was just kind of baking it down to show you the process, but this is what I would save out as a grayscale TIFF image, and then we would start placing those into Illustrator. So now we can go ahead and switch over to Illustrator, but before we do, I'm going to click on this because we're going to come back to Photoshop and do the fun part of this process. So let's go ahead and switch over to Illustrator. We'll do that here. So we're inside of Illustrator, and the first thing I want to kind of share with you is something that's really cool. It's the Smithsonian Open Access website, and the Smithsonian Institution is basically a museum. well, 19 museums, all these buildings in Washington, D.C., and you can't go through it in one day. You can't even go through it in a week. There's just all kinds of stuff, all kinds of themes. It's kind of like they've curated American history in all of its various forms. So they have photographs in their library. They have sculptures. They have 3D renderings. They have statues. They have fossils. They have old maps. Anything you can think of historically related, they're going to have it. And this service, the Smithsonian Open Access Service, provides you with access to any of it to use however you want. You can use it for commercial and non-commercial purposes. Just make sure to read their kind of, not a licensing agreement. I think it's Creative Commons license, but it allows for commercial and non-commercial purposes and usages. And once again, you can find anything. Let's say you love Triceratops. Well, guess what? They have these images that you could use of a Triceratops skull in this case, which was dug up in 1889. So this has been around a long time. And you can download assets and, maybe you take this into Photoshop and you blow it out. Maybe you posterize it or whatever. There's all kinds of stuff that you could find on this website. It's pretty cool. I looked up old maps and I found some really cool old maps and you could download and use, like, let's say it's in packaging or whatever, all kinds of things you can do. So that's one source. Now, you can also use traditional stock, but the only downside of traditional stock at times is it looks too propish. And that's what I thought about this one. I wanted a bowler hat on the artwork I was creating. And so I went to Adobe stock. I found this, but once again, it's not exactly the angle I want because it's almost like you're above the hat looking down. I want it almost straight on or even slightly lifted up on the figure's face. And so this I didn't think was going to work. So I did my own research and I found a public domain archive. And in that public domain, they had this image. This public domain archive was actually from San Francisco. And this is a police mugshot of a character that they caught in, get this, 1910. So this burglar would pose as a salesman, but he was doing it to scam people so he could get into their house and steal stuff. Well, he was arrested, and this is the mugshot, but guess what? He's wearing an epic bowler hat. That's exactly what I was looking for, and I go, oh, this is it. This is gonna work perfect. Now, what is public domain? Well, public domain, probably the best example in the United States of public domain is all the photographs related to the NASA missions, the moon landings, the Apollo mission, the lunar rover, etc. All of those things were paid for by tax dollars. So by default, they're public domain. Anybody can use them. Nobody has the copyright on them because we all paid for them. So that'd be the best example. This is in the same context. The public pays the police department to protect them. So the public gets free access to, in this case, a mugshot. And that said, you need to understand copyright. Copyright applies to two entities, a company or an individual. A company, let's say a photographer, well, let's start off with an individual. Individual, let's say a photographer just took a portrait of a guy, not a mugshot. We're talking just a portrait of a person. Well, that copyright of his image will last his lifetime plus 70 years. Well, for a company, the current copyright status is if they create an image, let's say it's a character, maybe it's a cartoon character of sorts. Well, that copyright lasts for 70 years for that company. After 70 years, it goes into public domain. For an individual, after his lifetime plus 70 years, it goes into public domain. Well, this was 1910, so let's say that's 110 years ago that this photograph was taken. So even if this was an individual, we'd be covered. But that's what public domain is. The website for the Smithsonian has a lot of good information on the rights that is provided to use their images. And they go through the Creative Commons copyright or Creative Commons information really well, I thought. So make sure to check that out. So all I did is I took this image into Photoshop, created a grayscale image, and just blew it out so I'd have nice contrast to create what I'm ultimately going to turn into a halftone. That's what we're going to be doing. Now, I also have this vector shape because we're going to mask it. I don't want his face in it, just his hat, part of his forehead, and that's all I need. So I just wanted to show you that. Now, obviously, when I was putting this together, I was thinking, well, we need a nose, and I'm just going to turn this on really quick because I noticed when I was working on this, hey, this kind of works. This already looks like a collage. It just kind of cracked me up that it actually goes with the head really well. But I'm jumping ahead. I'm getting off target there. I just want to show you that because it made me laugh. So stock. You can use stock photography if you can't find public domain. So once again, this is a free Adobe stock image, but I don't need this whole image. I just want her angry eye over here because I think that'll go good with the right eye we've already created. So I'm going to turn this off, and this is all we're going to use is we're going to focus on this. And so that's all I do with stock is I start putting together assets that will work for the different things I need. In this case, I needed a left eye that looked kind of mean, a right eye that was kind of wide and open, like shocked almost. Just a regular nose. I thought this guy's nose would work. We need an ear for the left. That I thought would work. Here we'll use this ear on the right. I didn't want to just replicate anything. That's why we're using two different eyes, two different ears. But our character is not even going to have a human mouth. We're going to use a tiger mouth because I think that'd look cool. And then I have this element, which is going to end up being an earring. So that might sound weird, but it's easy to put, once you figure out what you want to create, just figure out the ingredients that are going to be needed to pull it off. And again, take them all into Photoshop. In this case, I turn them all into grayscale. And if you look at the lady's eye here, I really pushed it where it's just barely left anything of the stock photography. So you can see this is where it started off. But when I brought it into Photoshop, I used Liquify to make it a little more sinister. Here's the one we created already. And these other ones, I just pulled off the contrast to work even better. On this one, I cut off the background on the ear because I want this earring to hang down here, and I didn't want anything in the background to impede on that visually. And then the more I was looking at photographs, I found a better photograph of a lion's mouth. So I took that and I just pasted it into this previous one I had, but I like the chin of the previous one, so it's just the mouth and nose of a new tiger image. And this is pretty sloppy Photoshop work, but you know what? It's going to work great, and you're going to see that in just a second. So we're going to start composing all of these things. So let me go ahead and turn that off. We'll go back to our criminal salesman here, and we're going to go ahead and mask that into the shape like that. We'll go up here. We'll go back to this nose. I'm going to mask this into like a triangular shape like that. There we go. We got his nose. And we're going to add something else to the hat here. I wanted a logo on it. So I took the all-seeing eye on the back of a US dollar and I put that there. I'm going to select this oval shape. And we're going to cheat because I have a graphic style here. It's just a radial gradient. If I click on the gradient tool that goes from white, and that, if you want to see what the value is, we can go to gradient here, click on this, and this is 100% white, and it goes to 0% white alpha, like that. And we'll just take this and move it over, and we're just going to position it behind our graphic. So we'll select that and paste it behind like that. And I think that's going to work fine. Now we're going to go ahead and turn on the mouth because the mouth is going to be this really cool tiger mouth. We have a shape to mask it in. We'll mask it. And I think this would look better if we just move this layer below the nose. Yeah, that looks better. And we're going to click on, you can see we have one ear masked over here. We're going to go ahead and mask the one on the right. We'll go ahead and do that. And by the way, I have masking turned on as an F1 keyboard shortcut. So I just select both, go F1, or I can go F2 to unmask it, or F1 to mask it again. A lot faster, because if you don't have keyboard shortcuts, you'd have to select both, go up to Object, pull down to Clipping Mask, and go Make. So I just set up F1, F2, just because it makes the process go faster. Watch my keyboard shortcuts. Movie on People Love to learn how to set up your own. Now we'll go ahead and turn on the earring there. That's going to work good. We'll do the left eye. So you can see how I even rotated it just to make it look a little more sinister in kind of angry of sorts. We'll take that shape, vector shape, and we'll mask that. And then the right eye is like this. So these are all the elements we're now going to use to create a really cool halftone. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to turn off everything now. We're going to go to this layer, and I'm going to this layer because I have a background that's already in it, which is a white background, but we have all the same elements here. Oh, one thing I should point out, I forgot to mention this, on the mouth here, as I was looking at it, if I zoom in on it, I thought, well, I kept this chin because I like the hairy aspect. Well, then I forgot to show you this part. So I wanted to imply that down here like this, and I think it would look better if we kind of reinforce that idea. So I might go like this, take this, go down here like this. And this is where the graphic nature comes in. I don't have to worry about it being anything close to what the photo is. That doesn't matter. This just is going to look better if we go ahead and just kind of imply what we want this to be. I think we need another anchor point here, like that. Might need two. And then if we go back down long again, we'll add another anchor point. Like that. Like that, just to imply the hairy chin. So I forgot to show you that. Let's go back to this layer, copy to PSD. And all we've done here is if we select this, all the elements we worked on and masked out are all grouped. If we go into keyline view or to isolation mode, we just have this. It's a background white. Now this size of the background is set up for the same size that we have in Photoshop. So all we're going to do is we're just going to select this now in Illustrator and go Command-C just to copy it to the pasteboard. Then we can go ahead and we can switch over to Photoshop. We have a document set up in here. The resolution of this document, if we go to image size, you can see is 450 resolution. All we're going to do is paste. So we're going to go Command-V to paste it. And we can paste it as pixels, doesn't need to be smart objects, and click OK. Now, one thing you're going to notice is this now looks smaller. Why is that? Well, this is, Illustrator wouldn't call this a bug, but it is. All those images we've masked, this is the totality of size of everything you can't see in Illustrator because it's masked. Well, when you paste it into Photoshop, it considers that as the size you're pasting, which is really dumb. But the easiest way to fix it is just to go up here to the sizing. Right now you can see it's almost knocked it down 25%. We're going to click on this to make sure the ratio stays the same, both width and horizontal. And we're going to bump this up to 100. And now this is the appropriate size. Yes, it's bleeding off the left and right because of how actually large those masked images are. But this is how it should work. And it's been this way for years. People have complained about it, but Adobe still hasn't done anything with it. I wish they would. But that's how you get around it. So once you have this, we can go ahead and commit to it like this. You can see it's on its own layer now. all we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead. This is a Grayscale file, by the way. So we're going to turn this into a really cool halftone. Now, to turn something into a halftone, you'll just go up to the mode. Right now we're in Grayscale. We're going to go to Bitmap. That'll bring up this window saying, do you want to flatten it? That's fine. So we'll just go, okay. Now you can see we have our input resolution of 450. What do you want the output resolution to be? We want that to match. So we're going to go 450. We don't want diffusion dither. We want to do halftone screen. So we're going to select that. We're going to click OK. And now this is how you're going to have to set how dense do you want that halftone? Do you want it fine? Do you want it coarse? Coarse means larger dots. So maybe we want to try larger dots. We'll go 10. I like to always use 45 when I'm doing a round type of halftone, but there's different kinds of halftones. The two I use most are round and linear or line, because this is how you can get some scan looking effects or really cool. There's diamond, ellipse, square, and cross. I don't use those too much. The two I use the most are round and line. But with round, I always go 45 because it looks more traditional, like a halftone. And these are going to be traditional halftones, meaning true life halftones, not fake ones that you can do in Illustrator. We're going to go over that too, just so you can compare and see the difference. But we're going to try 10 and see what that looks like. So with those set, I'll click OK. And that doesn't look bad. It's just way too big. So all we have to do is go Command Z. So I'm going to go Command Z to step back, and we'll just do that process again. We'll go mode, we'll go bitmap. Yes, it's okay to flatten. We'll just keep this the same. And now on this one, I think we're going to try 25 and click OK. That looks pretty cool, but I think it might be just a little too fine now. So again, Command Z. And this is the best way to do it. Just trial and error until you get what you like. Go back to bitmap. Yes, flatten. Okay on this. And I think we're just going to knock it down a little bit to 21. And boom. That looks awesome. And this is going to work really great. What we need to do at this point is save this out as a bitmap TIFF. So you just go to File, you go to Save, and just select bitmap TIFF as the format. Once you've done that, we're going to switch back to Illustrator now, and we're going to start working out all the other details related to this design. Okay, so we've copied this artwork to Photoshop. Let's go ahead and turn this layer off now. We've brought our bitmap TIFF in. So a bitmap TIFF, by default, the white in this image area is transparent by default, and a bitmap TIFF will be black by default. And right now, I've colored it a process black to look better, but if I remove that, you can see it's still black because it'll use a default black. That's why I tend to use process black, but technically, you can color this anything you want. That's why TIFFs are so nice to use. We're going to keep it process black for this composition, but at this point, the first thing I'm going to do is, just for the sake of clarity, so we can see how we're working out our shapes, we're going to set this to like 40%. And we're going to go ahead and lock that layer. I'm going to turn on these layers because these are the vector shapes we're going to use to colorize and detail our artwork. And I purposely made these offset, meaning they don't align with everything. They don't align with the shapes that are already there in the halftone. And I'm doing that on purpose because I want kind of that misregistered look of sorts. And I think this is just gonna look better. So we're gonna go ahead and select these shapes here, because all these shapes, we're going to use this yellow color. I love using yellow and black. I think it goes good together. Let's recolor that and check some. There you go. Then all these, whether it's the eye on the top of the hat or these, will all be white since they're eyes. This here on his eyes. His eyes themselves will also be this yellow color, and we'll put little highlights in here. Everything that's the teeth and the skull, I want those white as well. I think I think I'll leave the skull white like that. Then once we have those things worked out, I'll just go ahead and move this layer down below like that. We can go ahead and go back to this and turn it to full value again, 100%. I think that looks pretty good. And I'm going to keep working on this. Here's one element we're going to add, and this is a splatter. Now, I'm just going to, let's lock the halftone layer. I'm going to move this over. Now, I created this splatter years ago. Initially, it started as a paintball gun shooting it against basically a piece of plywood with paper on it to create the initial splatter. Now, I'm going to point out you probably don't want to do that when you're too close to your wife's car because it'll get speckles of paint on it and they won't be happy with that. Not that I did that. Yes, I did do that. So don't do that. Make sure you're doing it in an area. But you could use ink. You could drop ink on a paper from an elevated surface. We're just going to color that, and I think that looks really, really cool like that. Here's one other element I want to do is because I want to add a little more detailing elsewhere. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to turn this on like this because I don't want this splatter going up all the way through the nose. I want it to eat away and add a few more elements. So we're going to come over here and you can see this. Well, what is this? Well, if I go to the pencil tool like this, double click, make sure it's on smooth. That's what you want. Click OK. This is just a nebulous shape. So we could draw something out, something like this. And I'm using a mouse. So it doesn't even have to be a Wacom tablet. So something like this. This is how I created this shape here. And this shape I took into Photoshop, Gaussian blurred it, and halftoned it like we halftoned the face, and I got this. So that's all I did to create that. I just wanted to show you that. Now, yes, you can do halftones in Illustrator. I'm going to show you that shortly because I want you to be able to compare. But what we're going to do is we're going to take this artwork and it's behind all the other artwork. And just so you can see it, let's go ahead and color it this color first. And then I'm just going to move it over into position kind of right about there of sorts. And it's over the top of the splatter. We're going to color it white just to create some of that nice halftoning effect going through there. Another thing I might do is I might move these color shapes above the splatter, but below that, oh yeah, because you get that nice halftoning. And then we'll lock that layer. I think I'm going to go in here, and if I wanted to, I could move this to adjust this anchor to a different position. I might put it, somewhere like that. Just depends. No, I think I don't know. I can't make up my mind. Do I like it like, yeah, it looks kind of awkward being out there. I think I'm going to move it kind of down into that area. Yeah, I like that better. So that's what we're going to do there. So you saw how I made halftones in Photoshop. Yes, you can make halftones in Illustrator. So let me show you how to do that really quick because some of you might not use Photoshop a lot. So the mouth of this lion, here's the image. Here's the image we halftoned in Illustrator using the process I already showed you. Now, if we take this, we can actually halftone this in Photoshop. In Illustrator. So how would you do that? Well, what you have to do is you have to go to Object, and then you go down to you go to Effect, you go to Stylize, pixelate, and then you go to color halftone, and we're going to click that. It'll say current, double click. I have never gotten this before. This will apply another instance of this effect to edit the current effect. Double click the name. What? I don't have any effect on this. Hold on, let's check. Oh, I do have an effect on this. Okay, well, I forgot I had done it already. Let's do this instead. Let's just throw that away as if that never happened. You didn't see that. So we'll go back to pixelate and we'll go color halftone. Now this will come up. And just keep in mind, this has been in Illustrator, I think, since day one, but it has no preview. So that tells you how old it is, because anything people use a lot, they've added preview to by now. It doesn't explain things like channel 1, channel, what is that? Well, here's the easiest way to think of it. This is the size of what your dots will be in your halftone. You can input that here. This represents the angle for CMYK. Well, we're doing black. So all we need to do is enter 45 in each of these, like showing here. And we can experiment to see what size we want to try. I think maybe we'll try 8 first, like this, and we'll go, okay. And that's pretty fine. That's not going to work. So let's go to the appearance panel, click back in, and we want to beef this up quite a bit. So let's try like 12. Nope, I still think that's a little too fine. I don't know, maybe 20 would look good. Let's try 20. Okay, that's pretty close to what we have over here, but notice the difference. For example, I'm going to zoom in on a few areas. When you get to the hair down here, or you get up here to the teeth, let's see, we'll go up here right where it goes to the base of the nose. Notice how it kind of morphs into the light, into the dark. You have that line of demarcation that it isn't a straight line. It just morphs. And it goes from positive to negative to pull off that traditional halftone look. Well, that's really not what happens in Illustrator. What happens in Illustrator is it just creates circles. And there is no nice morphing. It's just making the circles larger or smaller. But the other thing I don't like about using this is that it won't retain a straight edge like we had on our image. It puts that edge as a halftone, and that looks kind of bad in my opinion. So that's the difference. But that is how you can kind of halftone Illustrator. But keep in mind, this halftone, I can't select this. Like right now it says, huh? What's the color? I don't know. Well, let's say you wanted it magenta. Well, you can color it magenta like that. You can color it yellow. You can color it the process black. So it's still editable in that sense, but I don't know. I'd rather have traditional, realistic looking halftones than simulated ones. That's just my personal opinion. But if you don't want to go into Photoshop, that's how you do it. So let's jump back to our artwork. We have everything set up now, and this is where I want to add type. Now, what I'm going to show you next just shows you my generation that I grew up in and went to art school with. Before computers, I used Apple computers when I was in high school. Then I went to art school and everything was traditional. Stat cameras. We touched Apple computers my second year in art school, but we were using Apple Lisa computers. So nothing like what we have now. So we're still doing a lot of manual work. And back in the day, if you wanted to get texture, you had to manually do it. And so I still think it works good in certain respects. Rather than using a font that has fake distress in it, just find a typeface you like, lay it out so you can see how we laid this out up here. And then what I do is I take a ball of masking tape and I make a ball and I just tap the surface and push down and pull off just to remove some of that pigment like that, just to distress it. And I'll do that for even the areas that color. So you can see this has been converted to our image trace, that is. Lots of anchors. That's like 15,000 if you look over here. So that's okay. That we don't have a lot of vector art in this, so that's fine. Then I go back in and I just kind of make it more custom. I don't want it super clean and straight, and I think this looks even better. So there's a couple ways you can texture manually. You can print it out, and you can use a masking tape that you put in a ball and tap the surface to pull pigment off. Or you can even take coarse sandpaper and actually scrape it off using that. I also use an X-Acto to kind of pick apart stuff just to improve it, go back in with a pin if I think I took too much off. So it's an art form in and of itself. I still like doing it manually, and I certainly don't like using typefaces that prefabricate stuff because it never looks as authentic or real. So that's what I did with this one. This is how I locked it up with the artwork. But I thought it needed some of the same aesthetic. So I went back in, added halftone and color just to add a little nice touch to the final logo type lockup. Now, as I showed you with the bitmap pits you place in after halftoning them, you could colorize those you want. I just wanted mine to be a simple 2-color design, black and yellow. And I think this looks good. But if I turn this on, you can see you can add any kind of color you want. You can colorize the TIFF images that you've halftoned to do whatever you want. So a lot of flexibility in this style. So how many clients are going to hire me to create this design? Well, probably not a lot. This was just something I did because I thought it was fun. But you can use the exact same principles to do something for a client. And I wanted to show you this project just to show you there is real world application to this. So this was for a company that makes products for linemen. Those are the guys that work on the power lines and repair them or replace capacitors. And this was for a rodeo that they were doing to raise money for one thing I didn't know until I worked with this client is that they have it's a very dangerous job. And a lot of linemen die every year because of electrocution and stuff, not because they did something wrong, because it's just a dangerous job. And so they had me create this t-shirt design they could use as a fundraiser to sell shirts at an event to raise money for families that do that. But I used all the same methodology I showed you in this movie to create this design. I used textures. Let's go ahead and turn off these. We don't need these on. I used textures here to make a nice edge around it. I took a stock photo of a lineman, that's where this came from, and just blew it out to create black and white artwork. I took a stock photo of lightning, isolated the lightning, and turned that into an element to put it in here. The same thing with the bird, blew it out to make it into simplified graphic form. I can't remember they have a name for linemen like this. Or I think it's like a good omen if a bird shows up when a lineman's working, something like that. And that's why they wanted me to work that in as well. But these methods can work for any type of client. So this style is great, though, for poster projects or even t-shirts. I first started experimenting with it after I graduated from art school. Now, there was a local designer in the Seattle area at the time. Well, he's still there, named Art Chantry. And he did a lot of music posters for the punk rock scene back in the day. And it was all collage by hand and no digital. Now, I'd say Art Chantry is a proud, creative Luddite of sorts who at times has scorned new technology and, as far as I know, still creates his designs non-digitally. That might have changed, but I really doubt it. But that's fine, in my opinion. You can't argue with his results. They're beautiful. So you might want to Google him and check out his artwork. Once again, Seattle designer Art Chantry. Check out what he's created, and I think you'll agree with me. It's pretty cool. I encourage you to play with this style. I think you'll enjoy the process and you can create some great results. So take the time to experiment and have fun with it. You can access the exercise files for this movie via link in the description below. Again, purchasing access to the source files or becoming a channel member helps me to continue making content for this channel, and I appreciate your support. Until next time, as always, thank you for watching People Love Process. I really do appreciate it. And as always, I hope the content helps you improve your own creative process.